We're going to start off by kicking in just a basic question. You know, I'm a client per se, right? And I am trying to achieve some kind of project or goal, and I'm frustrated. You deal with that?
Almost every single day, whenever we come across new clients or new solutions, is a lot of the times people are like, where do I start? Where do I start going into this process of development? And with development, you need to have proper planning.
Yeah.
That needs to start to identify what's going on in your project and what your goal is of your product.
And I think one of the challenges that I perceive is the element of being able to lay that out. You know, some way of being able to understand, like a Gantt chart, if you will, understanding all the requirements, the needs, all of that stuff. What are some of the key things you look at when you see an individual trying to grapple that larger perspective?
And that larger perspective is just so hard to really tackle from a high level.
Right.
And so a lot of the times you have to start jumping in and looking at each of those different pieces. And then you have to start asking yourself, well, how does it work in technology?
Yeah.
Because some of you might not have the technology background that is needed to start the project. And so you need those proper resources to be able to really jump in and look and identify how these different components will interact with each other. And they'll ask those appropriate questions.
Right. Dependencies, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Here's a key challenge is somewhere in between identifying and coming to the conclusion that you need resource assistance, you know, working through that, comes the bigger challenge of acquisition of talent or utilizing the talent you currently have, setting up a reasonable budget, maintaining that direction. Any pointers?
So a lot of the times it's harder to really identify how good your talent is and sometimes really understanding. Throughout the years, I've come into clients and started to look through their application. And I've sort of understand on the level of talent that they have in their organization. But one of the biggest things is developers and talent can always be upgraded or made better. And that's one of the things that I've always done throughout my career is trying to help mentor people around me.
Yeah.
And it only makes your organization better as a whole as you mentor and you bring that talent up.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I just want to say one thing is I've seen you do this before too. You'll look at a resource where maybe the resource that they currently have, the client has an employee, and rather than trying to replace that resource, you'll work to try to educate that resource so that in the post-sale they can administer, manage, and maintain that environment better. And I think that's selfless in a sense, but it's also good business.
Yeah.
Because you're basically saying to the client that, hey, our influence should be positive in as much that we're helping you take care of this independently from us as well.
And that's the biggest goal of all, I think, projects should be, is to make sure that they can walk away and be independent of us. Yeah. But we're always there to deal with any troubled water that comes across, right? But we really want to try to see them succeed by giving them the tools to succeed.
Yeah.
And that tool is where we can help in that process of identifying, coming up with those personnel to be able to succeed in the long term.
Yeah. CR&T employs, it's a platform to prevent scope creep. Scope creep is one of those things that everyone is faced with. And how do you prevent that particular behavior from occurring? Take it away.
Yeah, so scope creep is where projects fail. They turn from a 6-month project to a year, where budget doubles or triples to try to get it. That's one of the things that I have really good expertise to be able to understand where, hold off, is this really needed for the first version of your project? Let's table that if it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And try to really define that scope from happening in the project.
Pruning it like a plant. You're cutting off the pieces that, might be great features and functions to it, but you're really focusing on what's the needed deliverable.
Yes.
Right? And that sets what happens, like, and you know what I'm talking about. The client comes back and they say, gosh, I love where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, but what if we did this? Like, okay, I'm not going to color, I'm not going to lead the witness, but what do you do?
That happens almost every single day.
Yeah.
Because they come up with great ideas, and those ideas are fantastic.
Yeah.
But they're not going to help you complete the project on time in the period that you want, in the budget that you want. Yeah. So you have to asking your question is this going to provide value when you need at the very beginning of your project, in MVP stage, minimal viable product?
Yeah, yeah.
And so then you start to ask yourself, is this really needed? And after that, you can start to sort of trim the fat in a sense. Remove those nice features.
Yeah.
And continue on with those projects to be able to succeed.
And when you say remove those nice features, you're not saying, explicitly, we're not going to achieve those, we're not going to go after those. We're simply saying table those off to a timeline which is both budget conscious as well as, in line with the deliverable expectations. Sometimes I found that means reintegration, but I handle that really carefully because of the ethics involved. You want to make sure that when things deviate off of the scope, you're really crystal about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess the biggest thing that I've also seen to help people succeed is going through a Scrum process. And so a Scrum process will provide them the avenue to be able to introduce new features that might be really important for your MVP. And it does slide a little bit of your movement, but it also, you can start to remove other things from your product too. And so the Scrum process makes it so that they can really jump in and dive into their product and produce something that is going to provide the needed benefit at the end of the day.